In the once bustling heart of the city, Emily's life revolved around a rhythm of quiet routines and simple joys. Her father, John, was a man of few words, his presence steady and comforting, filling their modest home with warmth. A history teacher by trade, John would sit with Emily and her younger brother, Ethan, recounting tales of courage and resilience from distant lands, always ending with a message of hope. These were the moments that bound the family together, as Martha, their mother, would watch with a soft smile, gently patting her children's shoulders, or baking treats for them that filled the air with comforting scents of sugar and vanilla. Their lives had been simple but full, defined by love and small moments of joy. Every corner of their home bore traces of their togetherness, a sanctuary from a world Emily barely knew was shifting. But then came the whispers, the distant rumblings that eventually grew louder, transforming the city into a place no longer recognizable. It was as though an invisible shadow loomed over every street and every face. Emily was too young to fully grasp the implications, but she could sense the growing unease that seeped into her parents' conversations. She noticed the worry lines deepening on her father's face and the way her mother's laughter became rare, replaced by whispered conversations that halted when she and Ethan entered the room. They spoke of people leaving, of neighboring families who packed hastily, abandoning their homes, the doors left ajar as if even locking them was a pointless gesture against the terror encroaching upon their lives. Then came the day that John and Martha could no longer shield Emily from the truth. It was a cold, cloud-covered evening, the sky a heavy gray that seemed to mirror their mood. They sat Emily down and explained, as gently as they could, that the time had come to leave everything behind. Emily listened in silence, her small hand clutching her mother's, as the weight of what they were saying settled upon her heart. They would leave the only home she had ever known, the familiar streets and the friends she had played with. The journey began before dawn, in a city that seemed almost ghostly under the dim light of an early morning sky. Emily, with her small backpack slung over her shoulders, clung to her father's hand as they stepped out into the unknown. Martha carried Ethan in her arms, his sleepy face nestled against her shoulder, oblivious to the weight of their situation. As they moved through the empty streets, every sound seemed magnified, the crunch of gravel beneath their feet, the distant hum of tanks, the crackling of a fire somewhere in the distance. The once familiar city was now a landscape of shadows and echoes. Buildings that had once bustled with life now stood in eerie silence, their windows shattered, the walls scarred by the violence that had torn through. They took to the back alleys, avoiding the main roads where soldiers might be lurking. John led the way, his gaze constantly scanning the area, his grip on Emily's hand firm and protective. Emily watched his face, noticing the set jaw, the tension in his brow, and she clung to his hand, drawing strength from his presence. After what felt like hours of navigating through the maze of derelict buildings, they finally reached the outskirts of the city. A vast expanse of fields lay before them, stretching toward the horizon. The sight was both beautiful and haunting, the morning light casting long shadows that danced across the ground. It felt surreal, as if they were stepping into a painting that held both promise and danger. "We need to keep moving," John urged, breaking Emily from her reverie. The urgency in his voice propelled them forward. They crossed the fields, their feet stumbling over tufts of grass and wildflowers. Emily felt the warmth of the sun beginning to rise, but it offered little comfort as they trudged onward, the uncertainty of their future heavy in the air. As they approached a small thicket of trees, John spotted a dilapidated farmhouse in the distance. The walls were cracked, and the roof sagged under the weight of neglect. But it offered shelter, a temporary refuge from the perils that awaited them on the open road. They moved cautiously toward it, John signaling for silence as they approached. Inside the farmhouse, the air was stale and thick with dust, the wooden floor creaking under their weight. Martha set Ethan down gently, allowing him to explore the dim interior while she and John began to search for supplies. Emily followed her brother, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and curiosity as they explored the remnants of someone's life left behind. Ethan's laughter echoed in the empty rooms as he stumbled upon an old, broken rocking chair, Emily smiled at his innocence, wishing she could feel the same carefree spirit in a world now shadowed by danger. But the reality of their situation quickly reminded her of the urgency that loomed. They rummaged through drawers and cabinets, finding only a few cans of food and some stale bread. "Not much, but it will do for now," John said, his voice steady despite the disappointment. They gathered what they could, planning to move on as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon. As night fell, they settled into a small corner of the farmhouse, huddled together for warmth, exchanging stories of happier times, trying to ignore the creeping fear that clawed at their hearts. With the dawn of each new day came a renewed determination to survive. They continued their journey, always moving, always vigilant. The landscape changed as they traversed rolling hills and dense forests. The deeper they went, the more isolated they felt, yet they found a strange comfort in the simplicity of nature. The rustling leaves, the distant calls of birds, the gentle breeze that whispered promises of safety. One evening, as they rested beneath the canopy of trees, John pointed out constellations twinkling in the night sky, sharing stories of ancient heroes and celestial myths. Emily listened, mesmerized by his words, allowing her imagination to transport her far from the harsh realities of their existence. It was moments like these that made her forget, even if just for a while, the war that had ripped her life apart. But those moments were fleeting. One fateful day, they stumbled upon a small village nestled in a valley. The sight of people going about their daily lives filled Emily with a sense of hope. They approached cautiously, desperate for information and guidance. But as they drew nearer, they realized that the village bore the scars of war. Buildings stood abandoned, windows shattered, and the few remaining villagers wore expressions of despair. The family sought refuge in a small tavern that appeared to be open. Inside, the air was thick with tension. A few weary travelers exchanged wary glances, and the tavern keeper, an older man with a lined face, eyed them suspiciously. "Where do you come from?" he asked, his voice gravelly and harsh. "Just passing through," John replied, trying to keep his tone calm. "We're looking for a safe place." The man's eyes narrowed as he assessed their worn appearance. "Safe places are hard to come by these days. You're lucky to have made it this far." Martha stepped forward, her voice firm yet pleading. "We just need to rest and gather some information. We heard there's a safe haven in the mountains." The tavern keeper nodded slowly. "You're not the first to seek refuge there. But it's dangerous, and the journey will test you. If you're determined to go, you'd best leave at first light." They spent the night in the tavern, sharing their meager food supplies with other travelers. The night was filled with stories, tales of loss, survival, and resilience that bound them together in their shared plight. Emily listened intently, her heart aching for the families torn apart by the chaos of war. As dawn broke, they set out early, their spirits buoyed by the camaraderie they had shared the night before. The path to the mountains was rugged, winding through dense forests and steep cliffs. Each step felt like a test, and Emily often glanced at her brother, whose small legs struggled to keep pace. John encouraged him, lifting him onto his shoulders whenever he grew tired, sharing little jokes to keep his spirits high. As they climbed higher, the air grew colder, and the trees became sparser. They encountered a small creek, its waters sparkling in the sunlight, and paused to refill their water supply. The beauty of the mountain landscape was breathtaking, yet the looming threat of danger remained ever present. "Look, Emily!" Ethan exclaimed, pointing to a group of deer drinking at the water's edge. "They're so pretty." "Stay quiet," John instructed, but a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth at Ethan's innocent delight. Emily watched the deer with wide eyes, mesmerized by their grace. It was a fleeting moment of joy, a reminder of life before the chaos. As they continued their ascent, the weather began to shift. Dark clouds gathered above, and a chill wind swept through the trees. John urged them to pick up the pace, but Emily felt the weight of exhaustion settle into her bones. She stumbled over roots and rocks, her energy waning. "Just a little further," John encouraged, though Emily could see the strain etched on his face.
They pushed onward, the trail narrowing as they neared the mountain's peak. Suddenly, the heavens opened, and rain poured down in heavy sheets, turning the path into a slippery mess. Emily gasped as the cold droplets drenched her, chilling her to the bone. The wind howled around them, carrying with it a sense of urgency and dread.
"Quickly, we need to find shelter," John shouted over the roar of the storm, his voice a beacon of authority. They scrambled off the path, searching for any overhanging rock or tree that could provide refuge from the downpour.
As they ducked beneath a gnarled old tree, Emily huddled close to her family, the rain pounding against the leaves above them. The world outside was transformed into a chaotic blur, the wind howling and the storm raging. "What if it doesn't stop?" Ethan whimpered, his eyes wide with fear.
"It will, buddy," John reassured him, ruffling his hair. "We just have to wait it out."
Martha wrapped her arms around Ethan, whispering soothing words to calm his nerves. Emily watched as the rain danced like silver threads in the air, the storm both terrifying and beautiful in its ferocity. Yet in her heart, the worry gnawed at her. What if they couldn't make it to the haven in the mountains? After what felt like hours, the rain finally began to taper off, leaving the air fresh and fragrant. When the last drops fell, the sky transformed into a canvas of vivid colors, the clouds parting to reveal a brilliant sunset. John took a deep breath, letting the dampness wash away the tension of the day. "Let's keep moving," he urged, his voice steady.
They emerged from their shelter, the ground squelching beneath their feet as they continued their ascent, now illuminated by the warm glow of twilight. The path ahead was still steep, but with every step, they felt a flicker of hope igniting within them. As night fell, they finally reached the top of the mountain, where they were greeted by a breathtaking view that stole their breath away. Below them lay a valley blanketed in mist, dotted with lights that twinkled like stars on Earth. "Is that it?" Emily asked, pointing toward the flickering lights. "That must be the village we heard about," John replied, squinting against the fading light. "We should be safe there. Let's hurry." They made their way down the rocky slope, excitement mingling with trepidation. The descent was fraught with loose stones and uneven footing, but the thought of safety urged them on. Upon reaching the valley, they found the village bustling with life, families gathered around small fires, laughter ringing through the air, and the tantalizing aroma of food wafting toward them. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a sense of belonging, a flicker of warmth that reminded her of home. The villagers welcomed them with open arms, offering food and blankets to warm their weary bodies. An elderly woman, her face lined with kindness, wrapped a shawl around Emily's shoulders. "Welcome, dear ones," she said, her voice soothing. "You are safe here." John thanked her, his heart swelling with gratitude. They shared their story, recounting the harrowing journey that had led them to this refuge. The villagers listened intently, their expressions reflecting empathy and understanding. As night descended, Emily curled up by the fire, her stomach full and her heart lighter. She watched the flickering flames dance, their warmth wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. It felt surreal, this moment of peace amidst the chaos. But as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't shake the lingering fear. Would they truly be safe here? What would happen when the sun rose again? Morning light spilled into the village, illuminating the faces of those around her. Emily blinked against the brightness, the scent of fresh bread and coffee wafting through the air. She sat up, stretching her limbs, feeling a sense of renewed energy. The villagers were busy preparing for the day ahead. They welcomed Emily and her family to join them, sharing stories of their own experiences with war and loss. Each tale was a thread woven into the fabric of their community, a testament to their resilience. As the day unfolded, John and Martha worked alongside the villagers, helping to mend fences and gather supplies. Emily watched, feeling a sense of pride swell in her chest. Here, they were not just survivors. They were part of something larger, a community bound by shared struggles. But beneath the surface of this newfound peace lay an undercurrent of anxiety. Rumors of unrest in the surrounding areas began to circulate, whispers of soldiers marching closer to the village. The threat of war was not far behind, and Emily could feel the tension rising among the villagers.
One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the valley, a council meeting was called. The villagers gathered in a large circle, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames of a bonfire. John and Martha attended, bringing Emily and Ethan along.
A man with a weathered face and wise eyes stood up to speak. "We cannot remain complacent," he said, his voice steady. "Reports are coming in of soldiers closing in. We need to prepare ourselves." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, but fear flickered in their eyes. Emily clutched her mother's hand tightly, her heart racing. What would happen if the soldiers came? Would they have to leave again, start another journey?
John stood up, his voice firm. "We need to stand together. We have built a community here. If we are united, we can protect one another."
As discussions continued late into the night, Emily watched the villagers, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and dread. They were ready to fight for their home, to defend what they had built amidst the shadows of war. Days turned into weeks as the villagers fortified their defenses, transforming their peaceful village into a bastion of resilience. They gathered supplies, built barricades, and trained together, preparing for the inevitable confrontation.
Emily helped wherever she could, carrying water and food, lending her small hands to the tasks at hand. Yet, every day, she felt the weight of uncertainty bearing down on her.
One afternoon, as she and Ethan played near the creek, she noticed a group of villagers gathered at the edge of the woods, their faces tense. Curiosity piqued, she wandered over, her heart pounding. "What's happening?" she asked a nearby woman. "Scouts have spotted soldiers moving through the forest," the woman replied, her voice low. "They could be here any moment."
Emily's stomach churned at the thought of danger approaching. She rushed back to find her parents, her heart racing with fear.
When she reached the village center, chaos erupted. Villagers rushed to prepare for an attack, gathering weapons and forming groups. John and Martha stood together, their expressions grave. "We need to find a safe place for the children," Martha said, her voice firm yet trembling.
"Emily, Ethan, listen to your mother," John instructed, kneeling down to meet their eyes. "Stay together and find the cellar of the tavern. It's the safest place."
"But what about you?" Emily cried, panic rising within her. "We'll be right behind you," John reassured her. "Now go, quickly." Emily took Ethan's hand, pulling him away as fear clutched at her heart. They rushed through the village, the sounds of preparation echoing around them.
When they reached the tavern, they hurried down the stairs into the dark cellar, the cool air wrapping around them like a shroud. They huddled together, listening to the distant sounds of shouting and the clashing of metal. Time felt suspended as they waited in the darkness, every creak and thud sending shivers down Emily's spine. She held Ethan close, whispering stories to distract him, though her heart raced with fear. "Do you think they'll come for us?" Ethan asked, his voice small and trembling. "No, they won't. We're safe here," Emily lied, trying to sound brave. Deep down, she could hear the chaos outside, and her heart ached with uncertainty. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity. Suddenly, the sounds of the world above grew louder, the clamor of footsteps and voices filling the air. Emily's breath caught in her throat, dread washing over her. Then, the cellar door creaked open, and light spilled into the darkness. John's silhouette appeared, relief washing over his features when he saw them. "Come on, we need to move," he urged, his voice urgent. They scrambled out of the cellar, the world above a whirlwind of chaos. Villagers fought fiercely, defending their home against the advancing soldiers. John led Emily and Ethan through the back of the tavern, dodging the chaos that surrounded them. "Stay close," he shouted as they maneuvered through the village, their hearts racing with fear. The sight was harrowing. Fires blazed in the distance, smoke curling into the sky, and the sounds of battle filled the air. They spotted a group of villagers near the edge of the woods, rallying together in a desperate attempt to hold back the soldiers. John steered his family toward them, determination etched on his face. "Help us!" a villager shouted, raising a makeshift weapon.
We need more fighters. Let's join them, John urged, adrenaline surging through his veins. They rushed forward, Emily's heart pounding in her chest as they approached the makeshift defense line. The sight was chaotic yet inspiring. Villagers, armed with whatever they could find, stood resolute against the encroaching soldiers.
Form a line, the elderly man from the council called out, rallying the villagers. We fight for our home, for our families.
As they took their positions, Emily and Ethan found a spot behind a sturdy tree, peering out at the unfolding battle. The clash of metal echoed in the air, mingling with the shouts of defiance. John was at the forefront, fearlessly defending their newfound home, and Martha was beside him, her expression fierce. The soldiers advanced, their armor glinting ominously in the fading light, a stark contrast to the villagers' ragtag assembly. But Emily could see the fire in her people's eyes, the unyielding spirit that drove them to fight for their lives. Suddenly, a loud crash broke through the din of battle as a villager was knocked to the ground, and Emily gasped, covering her mouth. She felt Ethan clutch her arm tightly, his eyes wide with fear. "If they come here," he whispered. "They won't," Emily replied, forcing her voice to steady. "We'll be okay." Yet, doubt gnawed at her. The soldiers were relentless, pressing forward with calculated precision. The villagers fought back fiercely, but they were outnumbered, and the tide of battle was shifting. "Hold the line," John shouted, swinging a makeshift weapon, his face set in determination. Emily's heart swelled with pride as she watched her father, the embodiment of strength and courage. But just as hope surged, a group of soldiers broke through the defense, and chaos erupted. Emily felt her heart race as she and Ethan were pushed further back, their view of the battle obscured by the chaos. In the midst of the turmoil, Emily felt a sudden surge of panic. "We need to find Mom," she yelled, her voice rising above the din. She grabbed Ethan's hand and pulled him through the crowd, searching for Martha amid the frenzy. As they weaved through the chaos, Emily spotted her mother fighting fiercely, her determination glowing even in the face of adversity. But just then, a soldier swung his sword, and Emily's heart dropped as she saw Martha stumble back, falling to the ground. "Mom!" Emily screamed, adrenaline flooding her body as she rushed toward her mother, Ethan close behind.
John noticed their frantic movements and called out, "Emily! Ethan! Stay back!" But they were already too far, fear propelling them forward. They reached Martha, who was struggling to rise, her face a mask of pain and determination. "Get up, Mom! We have to go," Emily pleaded, panic rising in her chest. Martha looked at them, her expression fierce even in pain. "You need to get to safety, go," she urged, trying to push them away. But Emily couldn't leave her mother behind. "No, we're not leaving you," Emily cried, her voice breaking. Just then, a group of villagers charged in, helping Martha to her feet. "We've got her," one of them shouted, pulling her up. "We need to regroup." Together, they fought back against the soldiers, a fierce determination uniting them as they formed a protective circle around Martha. The sounds of battle intensified, but amidst the chaos, a flicker of hope ignited in Emily's heart. They moved together as a unit, pushing back against the soldiers and retreating towards the woods, where they could regroup and strategize. Emily felt the weight of the fight on her shoulders, but she also felt the strength of her community rallying behind her. "Stay close," John shouted, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "We'll find a way through." As they retreated into the shadows of the trees, the sounds of battle faded behind them, replaced by the sounds of their ragged breaths. They found a small clearing, and Emily's heart raced as they took a moment to catch their breath. "Is everyone okay?" John asked, scanning the group. Martha leaned against a tree, breathing heavily but unbroken. "I'm fine. Just a little bruised," she replied, her spirit undeterred. Emily glanced around, noting the fear and determination on the faces of the villagers. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice small. "We regroup and strategize," John replied, his voice steady. "We need to come up with a plan. We can't let them take our home."
As they huddled together, discussing their next steps, a sense of unity enveloped them. Emily felt the bonds of their community tighten, each person offering their strengths and insights to forge a path forward.
They planned their counterattack, utilizing the forest's natural cover to their advantage. "We'll ambush them as they approach the village from the east," John proposed. "If we can surprise them, we might stand a chance." The villagers nodded in agreement, a fierce determination igniting within them. Emily felt a wave of pride wash over her as she watched them, their spirit unyielding despite the odds stacked against them.
As night fell, they prepared themselves, gathering weapons and supplies. Emily and Ethan helped, their small hands working alongside the adults. The air was thick with tension, but also with hope. "Are you scared?" Ethan asked quietly as they sat by the fire, the shadows flickering around them. "A little," Emily admitted, wrapping an arm around her brother. "But we're together, and that makes us strong." Dawn broke over the valley, the light spilling into the forest as they took their positions. The villagers formed a line, hearts pounding in anticipation. Emily felt a mix of fear and determination surge within her as they prepared for the fight ahead.
John stood at the forefront, his gaze resolute. "Remember, we fight for our families, for our home. We won't let them take that from us."
Cheers erupted from the villagers, their spirits bolstered by John's words. Emily's heart raced as she took her place beside Ethan, the sounds of nature around them fading into the background. Suddenly, the first soldiers appeared on the horizon, marching with a menacing certainty. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she gripped Ethan's hand tightly, the time for action drawing near. As the soldiers drew closer, John signaled the villagers to remain hidden. Emily held her breath, fear coursing through her veins. The soldiers passed by, their chatter ominous and filled with contempt. "Now," John shouted, and chaos erupted. The villagers sprang from their hiding spots, launching their attack with a ferocity that caught the soldiers off guard. Emily's heart raced as she fought alongside her family and neighbors, every blow struck fueled by the desire to protect their home. She felt a sense of empowerment, each swing of her makeshift weapon resonating with purpose. The battle raged on, the clash of metal and shouts filling the air. Emily and Ethan fought bravely, their hearts united in their shared goal. As the fight intensified, she caught sight of John, fiercely defending their position, rallying the villagers.
Suddenly, a soldier broke through their line, heading directly for John. "Dad!" Emily screamed, fear gripping her heart as she rushed forward, but Ethan held her back.
"Stay here," he urged, panic in his eyes. But Emily's resolve only strengthened. "I had to help him," she insisted, breaking free from Ethan's grasp. She rushed toward her father, her heart pounding as she saw him struggling against the soldier. "Get away from him," Emily shouted, raising her makeshift weapon. With a fierce swing, she struck the soldier, catching him off guard. He stumbled back, and John quickly regained his footing, pushing the soldier away. "Emily, you shouldn't be here," John exclaimed, but there was a flicker of pride in his eyes. "I won't let you fight alone," she yelled back, adrenaline surging through her veins. Together, they fought back against the soldier, their bond unbreakable even in the chaos of battle. Emily felt empowered, fighting not just for her father but for her entire community. The tide of the battle began to shift as the villagers rallied together, their determination propelling them forward. With every clash and shout, they pushed back against the soldiers, reclaiming their home with fierce resilience. Amidst the chaos, Emily and her family fought side by side, the bond between them stronger than ever. They stood firm against the onslaught, the love they shared fueling their strength. As the battle raged, the villagers began to gain the upper hand. Emily felt a rush of hope, the realization that they might actually defend their home becoming tangible. But just as victory seemed within reach, a horn sounded in the distance, signaling reinforcements for the soldiers. A wave of dread washed over the villagers as they turned to see even more soldiers advancing toward them. "Fall back," John shouted, urgency lacing his voice. "We need to regroup." The villagers began to retreat, their hearts heavy with the weight of impending danger. Emily's stomach churned with fear, the thought of losing their hard-fought battle gnawing at her.
As the villagers fell back into the forest, a sense of urgency filled the air. They moved quickly, seeking shelter among the trees, but the sound of approaching soldiers loomed ominously behind them. Emily's heart raced as they regrouped, the reality of their situation weighing heavily on them.
"Everyone, listen," John shouted, rallying the villagers. "We can't give up now. We fought too hard for our home. We need to devise a new plan."
Emily glanced around, her heart swelling with admiration for her father. The villagers were exhausted but resolute, their spirits unbroken. Together, they gathered in a small clearing, preparing to strategize their next move.
"We need to use the terrain to our advantage," one of the villagers suggested. "There are caves nearby. We could lure them in and ambush them." "Good idea," John agreed, nodding thoughtfully. "But we need to act quickly. They won't be far behind." With a renewed sense of purpose, the villagers moved stealthily toward the caves, their hearts pounding in unison. Emily felt a mix of fear and determination as they navigated through the dense foliage, aware that every moment counted. As they reached the cave entrance, John divided the villagers into groups, assigning them roles for the ambush. Emily and Ethan were placed with their mother, who was now more determined than ever. "Stay close to me," Martha instructed, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We need to be ready." Emily nodded, feeling a sense of solidarity with her family. They stood together, waiting for the soldiers to approach. The tension was palpable, each breath heavy with anticipation. As the first soldiers entered the clearing, Emily felt her heart pounding in her chest. She could see their armor gleaming, their expressions arrogant and confident. They had no idea what was waiting for them. "Now," John shouted, and the villagers sprang into action, launching their surprise attack. The clash was fierce as they fought back against the soldiers, their determination fueling each strike.
Emily fought with everything she had, adrenaline surging through her veins as she defended her family and home. The cave echoed with the sounds of battle, but amidst the chaos, a sense of hope began to rise. "Push them back," John shouted, leading the charge as the villagers fought valiantly. The tide of battle began to shift once more, the villagers' spirit undeniable as they pushed the soldiers deeper into the cave. Emily felt a rush of exhilaration as they fought side by side, each victory igniting their hope. But then, amidst the chaos, a shout pierced the air. A soldier had broken away from the fight and was heading toward Ethan. "Ethan!" Emily screamed, fear gripping her heart as she watched helplessly. But just as she was about to rush to his side, Martha stepped forward, confronting the soldier with a fierce determination. "Get away from my son," she shouted, raising her weapon. The soldier hesitated, and in that moment, Martha struck, her bravery inspiring Emily. The villagers continued to fight back with renewed vigor, the realization that they could win this battle empowering them. As they pressed forward, the soldiers began to falter, their ranks thinning under the relentless assault. "Don't let up," John encouraged, rallying the villagers. "We're almost there." As the battle raged on, Emily fought alongside her family, their bond unbreakable even in the heat of combat. She could see the weariness on the soldiers' faces, their confidence waning with every blow struck against them. With one final push, the villagers surged forward, driving the soldiers back until they were forced to retreat. The cave filled with cheers as the villagers celebrated their hard-fought victory. As the dust settled, Emily looked around at the faces of her fellow villagers, a mixture of relief and joy washing over them. They had fought bravely for their home, and together, they had emerged victorious. But as the adrenaline faded, a sense of somber reality set in. They had lost friends and family members in the battle, and the scars of war would linger long after the fighting had ceased. "We did it," Ethan whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Yeah, we did," Emily replied, her heart swelling with pride and sadness. They had fought for their home, and though they were victorious, the cost had been high. As the villagers began to tend to the wounded and mourn their losses, John gathered everyone for a moment of reflection.
We fought not just for our home, but for each other, he said, his voice steady. This community is our strength, and together, we will rebuild.
Emily felt a sense of hope blooming within her, despite the sorrow surrounding them. They had stood united against a common enemy, and that bond would carry them forward.
With their spirits lifted, the villagers began to plan for the future. They would rebuild their homes, their lives, and their community. Days turned into weeks as the villagers worked tirelessly to restore what had been lost. Emily and her family played a vital role in the rebuilding process, their hands calloused but their hearts full of determination. With each brick laid and each garden planted, they forged a new beginning, one rooted in resilience and unity. The scars of the past would always remain, but they were a testament to their strength and courage. As Emily looked around at her community, she felt a profound sense of belonging. They had faced unimaginable challenges together, and through it all, they had emerged stronger. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Emily stood outside, taking in the beauty of her home. The village was alive with laughter and camaraderie, a stark contrast to the darkness they had faced. "Hey, Em," Ethan called, running up to her with a wide grin. "Want to help me plant some flowers?"
"Sure," Emily replied, her heart swelling with joy. Together, they began to plant seeds in the garden, a symbol of hope and renewal.
As they worked, Martha joined them, her smile brightening the scene. "You two are going to make this place beautiful," she said, kneeling beside them. With each flower planted, Emily felt a sense of hope blossom within her. They were not just rebuilding their village, they were creating a future filled with possibilities. As the seasons changed, so did the village. New families arrived, and the community flourished. The bonds formed in battle transformed into friendships and partnerships, each person contributing to the village's growth. One day, as Emily watched the children play in the fields, she felt a sense of peace settle within her. They had fought for their home, and now they were nurturing it with love and care. But as life settled into a new rhythm, Emily could not shake the feeling that their past was not entirely behind them. Whispers of trouble in neighboring villages reached their ears, and she could see the worry etched on her father's face. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked John one evening as they sat by the fire. "I don't know, Em," he replied, his gaze distant, "but we must always be prepared." Determined to protect their home, Emily and the villagers began training, preparing for any potential threats. The spirit of unity that had carried them through the battle burned bright, and they were ready to defend what they had rebuilt. As they trained, Emily felt a sense of empowerment, realizing that their strength lay not just in numbers, but in the love and support they offered one another. They were a community, and together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. One fateful day, while patrolling the perimeter of the village, Emily spotted a group of unfamiliar figures approaching in the distance. Her heart raced as she alerted the villagers, fear gripping her heart. "Get ready," she shouted, her voice steady despite the panic brewing within her. As the figures drew closer, they revealed themselves to be weary travelers seeking refuge. With caution, Emily and the villagers welcomed them, offering food and shelter. As the travelers shared their tales of woe, the villagers listened intently, their hearts heavy with empathy. The world beyond their village was filled with turmoil, and they realized the importance of their community more than ever. In the weeks that followed, the travelers became a part of their village, sharing their skills and stories. Together, they forged a stronger bond, uniting their communities against the darkness that threatened to consume them. But even as they grew stronger together, Emily couldn't shake the sense of unease. Rumors of the soldiers regrouping and planning another attack circulated, leaving a shadow of doubt in the hearts of the villagers. Determined to protect their home, John organized a meeting with the leaders of neighboring villages, seeking alliances. "We must stand together," he urged. "Only then can we defend ourselves against any threat." As alliances formed, the villagers prepared for the worst. They trained tirelessly, fortifying their defenses, and Emily felt a sense of pride swelling within her. They were no longer just a village, they were a formidable force, united in purpose and spirit. One night, as Emily stood guard, She caught sight of flickering lights in the distance. A sense of dread washed over her as she realized that the soldiers were coming. "Prepare for battle," she shouted, rushing back to alert the villagers. The urgency in her voice resonated through the air as everyone sprang into action, gathering their weapons and taking their positions. As the soldiers approached, their armor gleaming ominously in the moonlight, Emily's heart raced. This was it, the moment they had prepared for. "Stay close to your families," John commanded, his voice steady despite the tension. "We fight for our home, for each other." With every ounce of strength they had, the villagers braced themselves for the impending clash. Emily stood shoulder to shoulder with Ethan and Martha, their hearts beating in unison as they awaited the enemy's advance. The battle erupted with a fierce intensity as the soldiers clashed with the villagers. Emily fought valiantly, every strike fueled by the determination to protect her home. The air was thick with the sounds of clashing metal and shouts of bravery. But just as the villagers began to gain ground, a deafening roar pierced the air. From the shadows, a group of soldiers emerged, flanking them and catching them off guard. "No," John shouted, rallying his people, "stay together." The situation turned dire, and despair threatened to engulf them. Yet, just as hope seemed to fade, a familiar figure emerged from the fray. It was the neighboring villagers they had formed an alliance with, charging into battle with fierce determination. Together, they fought as one, turning the tide against the soldiers. "Push forward," the leader of the allied villagers shouted. "We stand together." With renewed vigor, Emily and her community pressed forward, their combined strength overwhelming the soldiers. The tide was turning, and the enemy began to falter under the unyielding force of unity. As the battle raged on, Emily found herself locked in combat with a soldier, the intensity of the moment sharp and immediate. She could feel the weight of their struggle, and just when she thought she might falter, a surge of courage washed over her. "Fight for your home," she reminded herself, her resolve hardening. With one swift movement, she disarmed the soldier, sending him crashing to the ground. She stood tall, ready to face whatever came next. The battle continued into the night, the villagers fighting with a fierce determination. With each fallen soldier, the villagers felt their hope blossom brighter. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future. As dawn broke, the last of the soldiers retreated, their ranks shattered and morale broken. The villagers erupted in cheers, relief flooding through them as they realized they had won. "We did it," Emily shouted, embracing her family. Tears of joy filled her eyes as she felt the weight of their victory. But amidst the celebration, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was not yet over. They had triumphed against one battle, but the war was still looming. "We need to be prepared," John said, his expression serious. "They will regroup, and we must not be caught off guard again." The villagers nodded in agreement, understanding the importance of vigilance. They had tasted victory, but they also knew the cost of war. As the weeks passed, Emily took it upon herself to help train the younger villagers, instilling in them the lessons she had learned from the battles. She taught them not only how to fight but also how to remain resilient in the face of adversity. "We are stronger together," she emphasized, her voice ringing with conviction. "No matter what happens, we will stand united." Her determination inspired others, and soon, the village was bustling with activity as they prepared for the unknown challenges that lay ahead. One day, as Emily practiced with her fellow villagers, a messenger arrived from the neighboring alliance. The news he brought was dire. The enemy was amassing troops, planning a final assault. "They seek revenge," the messenger warned, his eyes filled with urgency. "We must act swiftly." Without hesitation, John gathered the villagers, formulating a plan for their defense. They would not only protect their home but also stand alongside their allies. As preparations intensified, Emily felt a sense of foreboding. The weight of their situation pressed down on her, but she steeled herself, remembering the strength of their community. "Stay strong," she told her fellow villagers. "We have faced darkness before, and we will face it again." The day of reckoning arrived,
And as the enemy approached, the villagers stood united, ready to defend everything they had fought for.
The battle was fierce and unrelenting, the sounds of war echoing through the air. Emily fought with every ounce of strength, her spirit unwavering as she fought for her family and friends. In the chaos, she caught a glimpse of John rallying the troops, his leadership shining through as he guided them against the onslaught. "Hold the line," he shouted, determination etched on his face. "We will not falter." The tide of battle shifted again, the villagers drawing strength from one another. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, a surge of hope filled Emily's heart. They could win this fight, they had to. With one final charge, the villagers pushed forward, driving the enemy back. The cries of victory rang out as they reclaimed their home once more, the dawn of a new beginning breaking over the horizon. In the aftermath of the battle, as the villagers surveyed the damage, they felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. They had fought bravely, but the scars of war would linger. "We will rebuild," John promised, his voice steady. "Together, we will rise stronger than ever." Emily nodded, a sense of determination flooding her heart. They had endured so much, but now they had a chance to create a future filled with hope. As the days turned into weeks, the villagers worked tirelessly to restore their home. They mourned their losses but also celebrated their victories, knowing that their resilience had carried them through.
Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose, dedicating herself to the community. She helped lead initiatives to ensure their safety and foster relationships with neighboring villages, understanding that unity was their greatest weapon.
One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Emily stood outside, reflecting on their journey. They had faced unimaginable challenges, but they had emerged stronger, bound by love and friendship. "Look how far we've come," Ethan said, joining her. "We've created a real home here." "Yeah," Emily replied, a smile breaking across her face. "And we'll continue to fight for it, no matter what." As time passed, the village flourished, each day filled with laughter and love. The community had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the strength that came from unity. But even as life settled into a new rhythm, Emily remained vigilant, knowing that the world could be unpredictable. They had built a safe haven, and she would do everything in her power to protect it. One fateful day, as Emily walked through the village, she overheard whispers of an approaching storm, both literally and figuratively. The weather was changing, and with it, rumors of unrest in the neighboring lands grew louder. "Stay alert," she urged the villagers during a gathering. "We must be prepared for anything." Her words resonated with the community, and they fortified their defenses once more, standing ready to protect what they had built. As the storm rolled in, dark clouds gathered overhead, mirroring the turmoil brewing in the surrounding lands. Emily felt a sense of foreboding, but she refused to let fear take hold. "We will face this together," she assured her family and friends. "No matter what happens, we are strong." The winds howled outside as the storm raged, but within the village, a sense of unity prevailed. The villagers banded together, sharing stories and laughter to keep their spirits high amidst the chaos. Just when it seemed like the storm would never end, a knock echoed through the hall where they gathered. It was a messenger, drenched and weary but determined. "The enemy approaches," he warned. "We must prepare for battle." With a collective breath, the villagers sprang into action once more, the weight of their resolve heavier than ever. They had fought before, and they would fight again to protect their home. As they gathered their weapons and took their positions, Emily felt a surge of determination. They were not just defending their village. They were fighting for their future, their families, and their way of life. The battle that ensued was unlike any they had faced before. The storm intensified, rain pouring down as the villagers fought valiantly against the invading force. Through the chaos, Emily fought alongside her family, their unity a powerful force against the enemy. She could feel the weight of the past battles bearing down on her, but she refused to back down. As the fighting raged on, Emily found herself face to face with the enemy leader. His eyes were filled with arrogance, but Emily stood tall, her spirit unyielding. "You will not take our home," she declared, her voice strong and clear. With one swift move, she struck, the clash of metal ringing out as they fought fiercely. The villagers rallied around her, their determination inspiring each other. The tide of battle began to shift as the villagers, fueled by their collective strength and resolve, pushed back against the enemy. The rain poured down like a cleansing fire, washing away their fears and doubts. Each strike, each cry of defiance, echoed through the storm as they fought for their freedom. Emily could see the determination etched on her comrades' faces. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the life they had built together. She felt invigorated, the weight of her past burdens lifted as she charged forward, each movement a testament to her growth. With a final, desperate push, Emily and the villagers overwhelmed the enemy leader. With a triumphant cry, she disarmed him, sending his weapon clattering to the ground. The soldiers behind him faltered, their morale crumbling as they witnessed their leader's defeat. As the enemy retreated, the villagers erupted into cheers, their victory echoing across the rain-soaked battlefield. Exhausted yet exhilarated, they embraced one another, tears of joy mingling with the rain on their faces. "We did it," John exclaimed, gathering everyone in a collective hug. "We fought bravely and defended our home." Emily felt a profound sense of relief wash over her, knowing that their resilience had prevailed once more. But as the storm began to clear, a deeper realization dawned on her. They had won a battle, but the war against tyranny and oppression would never truly end. In the days following their hard-fought victory, the village banded together to heal both physically and emotionally. They tended to the wounded, honored those who had fallen, and celebrated their unity. Yet, amidst the festivities, Emily remained vigilant, aware that their enemies would regroup. The neighboring lands were in turmoil, whispers of further conflict reaching their ears. "We cannot let our guard down," she reminded her fellow villagers. "We must remain united and prepared for whatever may come next." As the seasons changed, Emily took on a leadership role in the village, advocating for training and alliances with other communities. She understood that strength lay not just in numbers but in the relationships they fostered. Through meetings and discussions, they began to form a coalition of neighboring villages, sharing resources and strategies. It was a time of healing and rebuilding, but also a time of preparation. One evening, as Emily sat by the fire with her family, she couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. "What if they come again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They will come," John replied, his tone serious, "but we'll be ready." As the flames flickered, casting shadows around the circle, Emily felt a sense of peace. They had built a home together, and no matter what lay ahead, they would face it as one. Months passed, and the villagers worked tirelessly to fortify their defenses. They constructed barriers, trained in combat, and forged alliances with other villages. The sense of community grew stronger, as did their determination to protect what they had built. Yet, as whispers of discontent spread through the neighboring lands, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. She knew that they must remain vigilant and prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. One fateful night, as Emily lay in bed, a distant rumble echoed through the village. Her heart raced as she recognized the sound, the unmistakable approach of an army. "Wake up!" she shouted, springing into action. The villagers scrambled from their homes, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they prepared for the impending attack. The enemy was upon them faster than they had anticipated. Shouts of alarm echoed through the village as warriors took their positions. Emily stood at the forefront, her heart pounding with determination. "Remember why we fight," she yelled, rallying her people. "We fight for our families, our future. We will not back down." As the first wave of soldiers clashed with the villagers, the air filled with the sounds of battle. Emily fought with everything she had, her spirit unwavering as she defended her home once more. The battle raged on, and as exhaustion set in, the villagers faced their toughest challenge yet. The enemy was relentless, pushing them back as fear threatened to take hold. But just when it seemed they might falter, a familiar figure emerged from the chaos. The leader of their allied villages had come to aid them. With renewed strength, the combined forces of the villagers surged forward, driving back the enemy. With each passing moment, Emily felt the tide of battle shifting. The villagers fought with a fierce unity, their bonds strengthened by the challenges they had faced together. As the sun began to rise, casting a golden light over the battlefield, victory was within reach. Emily fought alongside her allies, her heart filled with hope as they pressed forward. In the final moments of the battle, Emily found herself facing the enemy leader once more. This time, however, she was not alone. Her allies stood beside her, ready to support her in their collective fight. With a swift, determined strike, Emily disarmed the enemy leader, forcing him to the ground. "This ends here," she declared, her voice steady and resolute. The remaining enemy soldiers hesitated, the strength of their leader's defeat sapping their morale. With a collective roar, the villagers surged forward, reclaiming their home and driving the enemy back.
As the dust settled, the villagers stood victorious once more. They had faced tremendous odds, but their unity and strength had prevailed. The cheers of triumph rang through the air as they embraced one another, relief washing over them.
But amidst the celebrations, Emily felt a heaviness in her heart. The battles they had fought were only a glimpse of the challenges that lay ahead. They would need to continue to stand together, ready to defend their home against any threat. In the aftermath, as the villagers began to rebuild once more, Emily dedicated herself to fostering peace in the region. She reached out to other communities, seeking alliances to ensure their safety and stability. Through her efforts, they began to form a network of support, sharing resources and knowledge to strengthen their defenses. It was a time of healing, but also a time of preparation. As the years passed, Emily became a respected leader, known for her courage and determination. She guided her village through challenges, always advocating for unity and strength in the face of adversity. The bonds they had forged were unbreakable, and together, they created a community that thrived, one that was a beacon of hope in a world filled with uncertainty. One evening, as Emily stood overlooking the village, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had faced countless challenges, but through it all, they had remained strong. She turned to her family, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We have built something beautiful here," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "and we will protect it with everything we have." With the sun setting on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the village, Emily knew that their story was far from over. They had fought bravely, but there would always be challenges to face. Yet, as long as they stood together, united in their love for one another, they could overcome anything that came their way.